How many of you have noticed people who are otherwise perfectly healthy and who never fall ill that are now sick? You're probably one of them. Nagging little cold that doesn't seem to want to leave. And just as it does seem to want to leave, it comes back even stronger than you had it before. You've changed nothing about your routine. If you're active, you remain active. If not, you're still not. You've not changed your diet. You've not changed your medications. Yet for some reason, here in the last 6 months especially, since all of these unexplained UAP activities have been taking place over the skies of America and the world, you've been falling ill. Well, we've got an explanation, folks. There's simply no transparency, but the fact is we are in the next pandemic. I'm recording from this specific location today because I don't know if you can tell or not, but behind me there's a particular flock of wild birds feeding at my bird feeder. Well, that's a blue jay. He got ran off. But this type of bird over here typically does not migrate in flocks in the winter, okay? It's blackbirds. Blackbirds stay where I'm at, Central Virginia, all year round, all winter. It's rare to even see them in flocks. But they've been coming through in droves lately by the flocks, heading somewhere else as if they're trying to get out of the way of something. Well, folks, I had sent to me today, courtesy of subscriber Yolanda B, a very important message. It appears as if legal action is finally being taken against President Trump and the United States government for their lack of transparency in regard to what is going on. It's making everybody sick. This mysterious fog, these drones, many folks who have said have been seen spraying mists or fog. Some of these drones have been reported as being in people's houses. Now, millions upon millions upon millions of chickens, turkey, other poultry, birds being unalived because they've been infected with kaka-kaka-hachu, which there is a strain now that it seems to have transformed that has hit the cattle industry. Yes, a type of flu that is not supposed to be able to infect mammals is now causing cows on cattle farms to be destroyed. Like the 1,800 seals on a beach in Argentina in 2023 that were unalived by the kaka-kaka-hachu, the strain of which infected them was carried down to Argentina by birds migrating. Dead Birds Flying was the name of that article that the mainstream media in the United States doesn't want you to see because, wait a minute, this avian strain, it's not supposed to be able to pass on to mammals. Well, if you knew the truth, you'd see that that was a lie. So today, folks, we bring you the truth, more of it, like we've been doing on here for days. I know some of you have been asking where I've been. I'm still under the weather from being exposed to this stuff. Like an idiot, trying to be a hero, I decided to travel down to Key West, Florida a couple of weeks ago and spend 2 weeks at Ground Zero. And let me tell you, from southern Georgia, all through the Carolinas actually, but especially southern Georgia down into northern Florida, it looked like the airplanes were playing tic-tac-toe with each other in the sky. They were spraying so obnoxiously and so obscenely down there. Let me get to a couple of statements from our viewers, and then I'm going to read you an open letter where legal action is being demanded now against President Trump et al. Because enough's enough. All right, this one comes from Di. Hi, Kevin. You can use my first name, Di, and share the contents of this email. Some time ago, I must have signed up for health surveys following the Little C episode. Now, that was the pandemic from just a couple of years ago. So the assumption was that it was a follow-up for that. The survey is from King's College London and has been running for some time with surveys every so often. I wouldn't usually have any issues with this as I am generally fit and healthy and never had problems with the questions they ask. However, pay attention. Proof that the new pandemic is here. She continues, however, this time they are asking questions as to whether I have been in contact with birds. Do I keep birds, etc.? Weird. Had I not found your channel a couple of months ago, I would maybe just thought that it was a bit odd, but thanks to your info, I know there is more to their questioning than just a survey. Not sure if this is relevant to you, but I think it's worth noting. Thank you for what you do to get the truth out there. Stay safe. Di. It is very relevant. Why, when they were conducting surveys as to your follow-up health after the Little C pandemic, why are they now asking questions about caw-caw-caw-hachoo? Disguised as simple questions as to whether or not do you feed the wild birds? Do you have any chickens in your backyard? Why now are they asking this? All right, from Kim Demisier. And Ken, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Ken goes on. Ken's actually the gentleman that brought that article, Dead Birds Flying, to my attention here about a week or so ago, where we saw evidence of 1,800 mammals, i.e. baby seals, that were unalive due to a variant strain of caw-caw-caw-hachoo. Something that's not supposed to be contracted by animals, which we're now seeing with our cows in the United States. They knew it was coming in 2023, almost 2 years ago. They saw it on the beaches of Argentina with the seals. But Ken goes on to write, he sends me a lengthy email, I read it. What he basically says is he lives a very similar lifestyle to me. He's up on one of the Great Lakes, Lake Michigan, and he tells me that there are dead migratory birds up and down the shoreline of Lake Michigan. Birds are literally falling out of the sky. Now, like me, he keeps to himself. He's got some private property, and he doesn't like to leave it, and he is a veteran, and he's retired. So he's in 2 of the top 3 groups. Oh, and yes, he's had some health problems. He's in all 3 of the target groups to be unalived by this whatever is going on that we are all now demanding an explanation for. They're going after elderly folks who are in poor health, whose costs for their medical necessities has now outweighed any gains the pharmaceutical companies make from them by way of profits from their tablets. There are dozens and scores of prescriptions. Plus, Ken's a veteran, so he's knowledgeable of warfare, he's knowledgeable on combat, and he knows how to lead people. And he questions authority, okay? Thirdly, he's a targeted individual that he keeps to himself, almost like a loner, because, I mean, why do most of us who are loners keep to ourselves? I don't want to offend 90% of you watching, but the other 10% of you get it because that describes you. And that's why they're going after us, okay? We don't just take everything by the spoonful and say, oh, yes, sir, may I please have another? No, we question just about everything, especially authority, and especially when nothing's making sense, like the times we're in now. Kenosha, Wisconsin, that's where Ken lives. But he goes on and on about how, despite having certain health struggles, he rarely ever gets sick. And he is now, though. He is sick. He says, my health, where is it here? Okay, here it is. I have sneezing, coughing, runny nose, headaches, and a little shortness of breath. But he goes on before this to talk about how it's not from, he hasn't contracted this from other people because he's rarely around other people. He's kind of like a recluse or a hermit. And the only thing he does is he takes his 5 dogs out. So he's exposed to the outside atmospheric conditions and a lot of chemtrails where he lives. All right? Now, let's get to the meat and potatoes of this story. This is from Yolanda. Yolanda writes, I received info about this open letter this morning via Telegram and knew I had to send it to you. I have reactive asthma from being exposed to chlorine gas in swimming pools as a lifeguard. And the fog, this mysterious fog, and she puts here in Switzerland, so she lives in Switzerland. This shows this is a worldwide issue, which, what do you call such a thing when it's health related? Oh yeah, pandemic. All right, so here in Switzerland, the fog, it affects my lungs. That's why I know what you talk about on your channel is real. I told some friends about the fog and my lung pains, and now one of them sent the attached info to me. I took screenshots so you can print it. Yolanda B. So it's a letter from a group called Save Our Skies, written by the president and founder of the Gen 7 branch of the group. So, of course, I don't just post random information that random people send me. I want to do my thorough research. So I Googled it, and I Googled, is Save Our Skies a serious organization? You know what Google said? It says absolutely. Yes, Save Our Skies is generally considered a serious organization, as it is a grassroots group focused on advocating against excessive aircraft noise and pollution, often taking legal action against aviation authorities like the FAA, who approved the drones flying to do research, among other things, but never gave us any explanation. That's why this group is now taking action to address concerns regarding flight paths and procedures that significantly impact residential areas, Groups with this name actively engage in policy discussions and community mobilization to raise awareness about noise issues as well as other issues. Here's the letter. I printed it off. Thank you, Yolanda, for sending it to me. Now, again, this goes back to the group Save Our Skies, the Gen 7 sect of it, and it was written by the founder and president, Renette Seenum. Okay? This open letter is to President Donald Trump, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, and other federal officials. All right, here's the subject of this letter. This is how serious this is. We've got birds that are not supposed to migrate en masse that are doing that. What are they getting away from? We're going to find out in this letter. Dear President Trump et al., all those other people, I write to you with grave urgency regarding the national security threat that endangers the health and safety of the American people, our environment, and the integrity of U.S. airspace. Recent scientific investigations from Switzerland and across Europe have confirmed the release of toxic airborne threads of unknown origin, containing hazardous chemical compounds, metals, and possible nanomaterials. These substances pose a severe risk to human life, agriculture, and national security. Based on science, not cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs opinions off of some weird, crazy homesteading YouTube channel that typically doesn't even have anything whatsoever to do with homesteading. Alarmingly, these same toxic filaments have now been found throughout the United States. Independent researchers and concerned citizens have documented their presence in multiple states, including, then there's this huge long list of states, and guess what? Yeah, your state's on it, brah. I know what state you're in. You made the list. Where samples have tested positive for the same hazardous substances found in the European studies. This is no longer an isolated foreign issue. It is an imminent domestic crisis that demands immediate federal action. The nature of the threat. Extensive laboratory analysis conducted over a 2-year period have confirmed that these airborne filaments, number one, are not naturally occurring. The nanoscale polyimide structures, synthetic composition, and chemical profile indicate an industrial experimental origin. Like the industrial military establishment. Go figure. Number two, contain hazardous chemicals and metals. Laboratory tests have detected carcinogenic benzene derivatives, epoxides, ketones, histamine derivatives, and increased aluminum content, among other toxic elements. We're being poisoned, folks. It's right here. Science. Number three, present and imminent danger to public health. Inhalation means if you inhale it, ingestion if you swallow it, or dermal exposure, which means if it touches your skin, to these substances can lead to acute chronic health conditions, including respiratory distress, neurological damage, and immune system disruption. That's what I've got. My immune system used to be like Superman's. Even kryptonite couldn't get through. So it was stronger than Superman's. Now, I come outside on my own property and like Ken, I'm getting sick. My defenses are weakening. They're shutting down. That's why I'm not out here doing this daily. Some of you are asking. Sometimes I just can't make myself get up to it. Continuing, number four, are potentially linked to military or experimental activities. Dang on. Here, me and Ken, the other guy that chimed in this morning, here we are, veterans. Whew. Hey, who better to test than previous guinea pigs, right? The presence of nanomaterials and strategic airborne dispersal patterns, i.e. in flocks of birds, potentially, raise concerns that these materials may be linked to geoengineering, biowarfare, or classified military testing without public oversight. This is a violation of U.S. federal law, U.S. law and federal obligations. The deliberate or negligent release of toxic airborne substances violates multiple U.S. laws, including but not limited to the Clean Air Act, 42 U.S. Code 7401 at SEC, prohibits the uncontrolled release of hazardous pollutants into the air. Here's another one. The Chemical and Biological Weapons Control and Welfare Elimination Act, which outlaws the deployment of chemical or biological agents harmful to human life, production or use of chemical agents with harmful intent. That's why we invaded Iraq, for doing that kind of stuff. Yet what's going on here? Remember the saying, oh, only other people's governments would do such things? The Posse Comitatus Act and the Insurrection Act restrict unauthorized military activity within U.S. borders and demand federal intervention against domestic threats. That means being attacked by your own government. International law obligations. The U.S. is a signatory to the Convention on the Prohibition of Military or any other hostile use of environmental modification techniques, all this known as INMOD, which prohibits the hostile manipulation of the environment. Additionally, 2 key U.S. statutes must be immediately enforced to put an end to this dangerous activity. So those are the laws they are breaking, and these 2 statutes must be implemented right now. U.S. Code Chapter 9A, Weather Modification Activities or Attempts. This requires all weather modification activities to be reported to the federal government. The fact that toxic airborne filaments are appearing without public disclosure strongly suggests violations of this law. If these dispersions are part of an unauthorized or classified weather modification program, the American people have a right to full transparency. That is not what we're getting. We were promised that on day 2 of President Trump's presidency, we would have full disclosure and full transparency. They are refusing to be transparent about any of it. That's our right as U.S. citizens. That's one of those rights I fought for on foreign soil, and we're not being granted that right. Instead, no, we're being made sick feeding birds in our own yard. Shame, shameful, ashamed. All right. Here's the other one that's got to be instituted. 50 U.S. Code 1520A. Restrictions on the use of human subjects for testing of chemical or biological agents. Explicitly prohibits the Department of Defense and other federal agencies from conducting chemical or biological testing on human subjects without informed consent. The widespread dispersal of these substances without disclosure or approval strongly indicates a breach of this federal protection. If the U.S. government or any private contractors are engaging in such activities, they must be held accountable under the law. Failure to act is a breach of duty. The failure of federal agencies, including the EPA, Health and Human Services, and the Department of Defense, to acknowledge and address this threat constitutes a dereliction of duty. That means you're a derelict. You're no better than the derelicts on the street. Derelicts in suits and ties, taking up space in federal agency offices. I don't care how nice you look in that suit, you're still a derelict. Instead of going like this for our money, our hard-earned money, you're getting it on election day, being put in positions you're not fulfilling your obligations for. Okay. The American people are being subjected to toxic exposure without warning, investigation, or countermeasures from the government. Such an action echoes the misconduct seen in past environmental and chemical scandals such as Flint's water crisis, remember that, Flint, Michigan, Agent Orange exposure in Vietnam, and then the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. It's just a repeat, folks. It's a repeat. The same players up to the same shenanigans with zero transparency, giving no explanation to the people. Well, Renette Seenum, president and founder of the Gen 7 sect of Save Our Skies, demands for immediate federal action. Here's the demands, folks. To uphold the national security's interests of the United States and protect the health of its citizens, we demand the following: a full-scale federal investigation into the source, composition, and purpose of these airborne filaments. Immediate coordination between the Department of Defense, EPA, Health and Human Services to conduct independent testing and risk assessment. An immediate halt to any classified or experimental military activities involving atmospheric dispersal of chemical, biological, or nanotechnological materials over U.S. territory, i.e. southern Georgia, northern Florida, the largest depository area of retirees. Congressional hearings to examine the evidence, investigate potential violations of federal law, and hold responsible parties accountable. Public disclosure of all existing government data on atmospheric testing, geoengineering, and potential foreign or domestic threats related to these toxic materials. Full enforcement of 15 U.S. Code Chapter 9A to ensure that no undisclosed weather modification activities are occurring in violation of U.S. law. And finally, immediate enforcement of 50 U.S. Code 1520A to not only investigate but also terminate any and all illegal biological or chemical experimentation on American citizens, ensuring full accountability for any agency, contractor, or foreign entity involved. In conclusion, they write, Mr. President, Secretary Hegseth, and Mr. Kennedy, the weaponization of our airspace is no longer a theoretical concern. It is a present reality. The science has proven it. We know you've weaponized our airspace. They continue. The government has a constitutional and moral obligation to protect the American people from covert and unauthorized threats, foreign or domestic. We urge you to take immediate, decisive action to investigate and eliminate this ongoing environmental assault. Respectively, Renette Seenum, President and founder of Gen 7, Save Our Skies. So there you have it, folks. Like the title says, and the question I asked at the beginning of the video, why are people who are just otherwise normally perfectly healthy, never get as much of a sniffle now, especially in the last 6 months, but over the course of the last couple of years, why are they getting sick? Why do people like me, who exercise daily, eat healthy, does not abuse substances, takes care of myself tremendously, how come I can't shake what's been bothering me ever since being exposed to these drones, the fog, the mist, whatever's in the air, the chemtrails are spraying all over the place? And why are birds that ordinarily don't migrating in droves by flocks, droves of flocks, going to places like Argentina and infecting mammals, i.e. seals, with the strain of a virus that's not supposed to leave the avian, the bird genre of species, wild animals, and now it's in the cows in the United States? They're concerned about the milk? Keep your eyes, your nose, your ears, your head, everything on a swivel. See you for more next time.